We're here at the very last vestige of Arlington Downs Racetrack. This little watering trough and fountain is all that's left of a massive grandstand, double track, giant collection of stables, its own bass lake, and lots of parking lots. How it happened and why it ended is a strange and fascinating story. I'm OK Carter, telling you this story with Donna Derevich, and this is an Arlington time capsule. For a few shining years, Arlington Downs Racetrack, was an American mecca for horse racing. Tens of thousands of racing fans showed up, some of them hoping to turn a $5 bet into a month on Easy Street.
Some race fans were millionaires already. Some were celebrities like Will Rogers. Some were kingmakers like Star Telegram publisher Eamon Carter. And some were politicians, the ilk of Vice President Cactus Jack Garner, or Governor Ma Ferguson, or ex-Governor Paul Ferguson. And some were movie stars, Ginger Rogers and others. The track attracted big-time bookies, the best jockeys, and for a while, the Texas Derby seemed well on the way to adding another event to the famed Triple Crown of racing, the Kentucky Derby, the Belmont, and the Preakness, which would make it a quadruple crown. Which begs the question, if Arlington Downs was so successful, why did it go away? Isn't it still here? We'll find out. But for this story to really make any sense, first we have to tell the short story about the critical person in the Arlington Downs saga, William Thomas, W.T. Waggoner. He was born in 1852 in Hopkins County, Texas, and his father, Daniel Waggoner, was a rancher, a good one, who also had enormous faith in his young son.
So much faith that in 1869, right before W.T. turned 18, his father gave him all of $12 expense money. They were cow rich and cash poor. Told his cowhands that W.T. was foreman in charge and sent them on a risky drive north, right through the middle of Indian country to Abilene, Kansas, with 5,000 head of cattle. Young W.T. sold the herd for $55,000, equivalent to about $1.1 million in today's dollars, and also before income tax.
His dad was so impressed that by 1879, W.T. became manager of the family ranch. By then, the money from that Abilene sale had seeded the purchase of more and more acres around China Creek, Texas, up near the Oklahoma border. While other ranchers were going broke, the Waggoners kept buying land in multiple North Texas counties. Wilbarger, Clay, Wichita, Ford, Baylor, Archer, Knox. On a map, if you put your finger on Vernon, Texas, you'll be in the vicinity. Some joke that the only real purpose of such hard-scrabble country was to hold the rest of the planet together. The Waggoners bought a lot of it for just $1 an acre. It's a big ranch, though, more than 500,000 acres inside one fence.
When Dan died in 1902, W.T. inherited all of it. That part of Texas can be mighty dry. So, in 1903, W.T. decided he better drill some water wells for all those cattle and horses. Now, if you're really wanting water, a terrible thing happened. Every time Waggoner's drill team sunk a well, they hit oil, one shallow gusher after another, just as the auto age was shifting into high gear. Waggoner did not partner with anyone, none of that one barrel and eight business. He kept all the profits, even built his own refinery. Instead of just another affluent cowman, he became a multimillionaire, one of the wealthiest men west of the Mississippi. The joke was that every one of his cows had 40 acres of grazing land and its own oil well. He became the newest member of the Nouveau Riche Club.
Of course, the critical word in nouveau riche is the riche part. Waggoner lavished some of his wealth on opulent homes for himself and his 3 children, all of whom would make really pretty interesting stories themselves. All that money would also allow W.T. to invest heavily in his lifetime fascination, horses. Cutting horses, polo ponies, quarter horses, and thoroughbreds. He even built a little racetrack near Electra, a town, by the way, named after his daughter, Electra. Just so you can drop this factoid into your next trivia game, the Buick Electra car was named after her. That's another good story we'll let somebody else tell. At the time, you could race horses all you wanted. You just couldn't bet on them legally. Pari-mutuel wagering was against the law in Texas. Waggoner sure wanted to change this, but to do so, he needed a showplace for horses, someplace easily accessible by auto, train, public transit. He knew Vernon, Electra, and Wichita Falls were not the right place. The right place, he decided, was Arlington.
WT may have been a country boy, but he knew 4 big things would be necessary to make a real racetrack work. The first 3 would be location, location, and location. The 4th, money. Lots of it. Fortunately, he had money, plenty. Eventually, his ranch would have 2,000 producing wells. That's a lot of cash flow crude. The location dilemma? He solved that in 1927 by buying 5,500 acres in Arlington. Why Arlington? Well, air travel wasn't a big deal in 1927. People traveled mostly by auto, train, bus, or in big cities by streetcar. There was no I-20 then, no Interstate 30. What there was US 80. The Bankhead Highway, the main southern continental route in the whole United States, starting in Washington, D.C., ending in San Diego, California. Not coincidentally, Waggoner's new place in Arlington had a couple of miles of frontage in Arlington along US 80 from Texas 360 to Stadium Drive. Today that section is called Division Street. That's it behind me. Not so busy today, but it was definitely a red-hot location in 1929. And the Texas and Pacific Railroad was across the street. The bus line had an Arlington Downs stop. 2 blocks away to the south, the interurban electric trolley line ran right through, connecting a big chunk of the growing metroplex to WT's new endeavor. When it came to location, WT was finally, definitely in the right place.
WT called his little ranch the 3D Stock Farm. It was a variant of the big ranch, and the brand were 3 Ds backward, named sort of for his father Dan, because it was Dan, Dan, Dan. Well, the branding story of that is something that's kind of long, and we'll probably do it another day. But he began building a 1.25-mile racetrack on the north side of the Bankhead Highway. It had a 6,000 person capacity. The cost was about $3 million, which in today's money is about $50 million. The first race was in November of 1929, November 6th to be exact, but not the best timing because that was a week after the late October stock market crash and Black Friday, better known as the worst calamity in the history of the planet. But sometimes it's good to be rich. But there was still one persistent snag. Parimutuel betting was still illegal. Okay, time out. Ever wonder what parimutuel means? Here's the way it works. All the money that's bet is put into a pool, and then the expenses, like for the winning purses, taxes, and the track share, called the vigorish, are deducted, and then everything else is divided among the winning bettors. Sure, Waggoner could charge admission, sell hot dogs, and a lot of beer, but he had to fund the prize money himself, and that was expensive. And don't forget, in 1929, he was no longer nouveau riche, but by Texas standards, he was old money prosperous. And also remember, he was born in 1852, so he was 77 years old in 1929.
As rich men tend to do in Texas, Waggoner spent a lot of time in Austin constantly lobbying lawmakers to legalize betting. There was resistance to this, but WT had a suitcase of cash, to which I would opine there was not so much resistance. In the meantime, he dug deep into his own pocket to pay for purses, and he was active in racing and raising thoroughbreds, at one time having not one, but 2 horses in the Kentucky Derby. Alas, his horses did not win. One of his ambitions was to win the Kentucky Derby. It just never happened. He also invested in jockeys, good ones. For example, buying the contract of big-time racer Tommy May. What at the time was a staggering number, keep in mind it's a depression, $10,000. May ended up riding Waggoner's horse Kilkerry in one such Kentucky Derby. Waggoner finally found a receptive ear, one with real influence, in Governor Miriam Ma Ferguson, elected the state's first female governor after her husband became the first and last governor to be impeached. Texans like the Fergusons, impeachment be damned. Finally, in 1933, the legislature approved parimutuel betting, prompting WT to spend another $1 million spiffing up Arlington Downs even further. The small lake in the middle of the track was even stocked with bass just in case any of the big spenders wanted to catch a few fish.
The track boomed. It was the Texas Derby leading up to the Kentucky Derby. Famous horses showed up, ridden by legendary jockeys like May, Eddie Acaro, George Wolfe, Buddy Hess, and Johnny Longden. Waggoner even tried to buy the famous Man of War, but he discovered that indeed some things really are not for sale. Big spenders would show up to bet money at the track by day, and if they were really flush, at night they'd journey down the Bankhead Highway to the other end of town and gamble at the top of the Hill Terrace Casino. Yes, Arlington was sort of a Las Vegas before Las Vegas. And there's another oddity about this. The Terrace Casino site is now the home of Arlington Baptist University. And it's likely the track would still be in operation today, except for one thing. By 1933, the aging Waggoner was exhausted. He was closing in on his 81st birthday, and in May he suffered a debilitating stroke. In 1934, he died. And although the track was enormously profitable, it was still the Great Depression. Many church leaders and others opposed gambling. Most likely, Waggoner, alive and healthy, could have withstood this challenge. Horse racing would have become accepted as just another component of life in horse-happy Texas. Without him, though, it was doomed. In 1937, the legislature outlawed parimutuel betting. It would be more than a half century before horse racing and betting returned to the state.
Arlington Downs itself hung around for a while. The Waggoner family kept the property just in case horse racing would return. The Downs hosted stock car races, drag races, rodeos, square dances and fairs, even polo matches. Yes, polo.
The track even showed up in the movies, like the B-grade auto racing film To Please a Lady, starring June Allison and Clark Gable, along with Adolphe Menjou and Will Geer.
Otherwise, the fields of bluebonnets and the rose plantings perished. The bass pond was drained. During World War II, the stables housed Army jeeps and trucks parked 20 deep. Pleasure boats from a Grand Prairie manufacturer were stored in the grandstand.
Finally, in 1956, Angus Wynn Jr., backed by the Rockefellers, handed a check for almost $5 million to the Waggoner family. The 3D stock farm and Arlington Downs would become the core of the massive new Great Southwest Industrial Park, and also to an amusement park, Six Flags Over Texas, which even today is the top tourist draw in the state. Arlington Downs, which looked like this, today looks like this and is across Division Street from General Motors. Okay.
It was 1987, 50 years gone by before Texas voters approved parimutuel betting on the ponies again. It would not return to Arlington, the nearest track being Lone Star Park in neighboring Grand Prairie. If you want to learn more about Arlington Downs, check out a permanent exhibit at the Fieldhouse Museum in Arlington. Thanks for listening. Don and I will see you again at the next Arlington Time Capsule.